Herzlich willkommen. Mein Name ist Maja Vattermann. Ich begrüße Sie bei der WerteInitiative und freue mich, Sie heute durch den WeTalk zu führen. Die meisten Jüdinnen und Juden in Deutschland haben eine ganz besondere Beziehung zum Staat Israel. Daher auch ihr besonderes Interesse daran, was des Staates Vertreterinnen und Vertreter sagen und tun. Deswegen freuen wir uns ganz besonders, den Vertreter des Staates Israel heute da zu haben, seine Exzellenz Jeremy Issacharoff, der uns leider Ende des Monats wieder verlässt und zurück nach Israel geht. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I have a few questions. You came here in 2017, comparing Germany back then and Germany now. What are the main political changes?
Well, if I look at Germany and Israel's relations since then, I see a lot of continuity and I see things getting better. Obviously, if I look at it, Germany through European terms, the Europe I came to in 2017 is much more different to the Europe we see today. And it's really sad for me that I'm leaving at a time when Europe and Germany is also facing major challenges in the area of national security. But I'm sure that this will also contribute to the continuing strengthening of the Israeli-German partnership. So there are changes, but there are many elements of continuity, and I even think prospects for the relationship being strengthened.
You mentioned the problems Europe and Germany are facing now. What are your main considerations looking at and comparing Israel's problems in these terms to the German and the European challenges?
Well, I think the main issue in Europe has been that after the Soviet Union collapsed, people figured that the Cold War, the tensions between East and West had largely disappeared, and obviously this is not the case. And the last few weeks have shown very clearly that there is still a very great relevance to NATO, given the tensions with Russia. So I think that this situation does illustrate that at times diplomacy is still very important, but it is not enough. And that's one of the things that Israel also has to face. We have to try and achieve peace with our neighbors and expand the process, but we also have to continue to deal with threats that we perceive. So you need, and I think this is something that is going to emerge from this present crisis, the thinking in Europe that you need to have diplomacy, but it has to be backed up to a great extent by deterrence and determination. And then diplomacy can work in a more effective way.
Okay. Looking at these challenges and this big word, diplomacy, how hard is it for a diplomat like you to negotiate behind closed doors and then not being able to talk about it in public?
Well, it's very difficult because there's a lot of great things that happen. Look, I've been in Germany for over 4 years, and I've been in the Foreign Service for over 40 years. And I've done a lot of things that I would be delighted to come out and scream and tell the world that we've done something. And obviously you have to be quiet. And it's not a matter of just being quiet about it. It's a lot of times we've had contacts in the past with the Gulf countries, and it was very clear to me that the discretion, the confidentiality that we kept around these talks enabled these talks to flourish, to expand, and even lead eventually to the Abraham Accords. So from my point of view, you need to be discreet. You also need to be reliable and credible. And those are the elements of diplomacy that have always guided me through it. But it's sometimes difficult to not be able to share with everyone the experiences you've seen and the good things, because I think it's important that people on the ground, regular people, also see that the relations between countries are sometimes much better than they can even imagine. And I think that's also very relevant in terms of the Israeli-German relationship as well.
Now you talked about the Accords. If you would need to pick some very special moments in your career, I don't want to say one special moment because I'm sure there are more.
There are a few.
Yeah, so what would you say? Is the Abraham Accords one of them?
Look, I was actually in 1994 in Washington, and we had the first talks with the United Arab Emirates. And that led to a presence in Abu Dhabi and a whole process of, I'd say, dialogue, partnership with the Emirates over the years. And so for me to be able to be in Washington when they signed the Abraham Accords was a great sense of satisfaction that you could actually see the beginning of a process and actually be witnessing something coming to fruition, which is not very often something you see in diplomacy. Usually in diplomacy, you can measure it by a bit of a movement here, a bit of a movement there. It's not always so obvious, and sometimes it can still be very important, but not necessarily obvious. So but I think if I look back at the time in Berlin, to hook it back to that moment, I will never forget the first meeting of Heiko Maas, meeting with the Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates, His Excellency Sheikh Abdallah Ben Zayed, and also with the Foreign Minister of Israel, Gabi Ashkenazi. And they met in the center of Berlin at the Holocaust Memorial. And it was first time they'd met together as a threesome, and it was a very exciting moment and a very moving moment, I think, for all of us.
I have goosebumps. So, after your long career, and you just described many insights, what would you say about the relations between all kind of different states to Israel? And is there something special between Germany and Israel beside the Shoah?
Oh, there's a lot, I think. Look, I think there's no way you can talk about Israel-German relations without,
of course,
remembering the Shoah and commemorating it. And I must say that one of the things that I found most impressive in Germany was the German determination not to run away from the responsibility, but to accept responsibility and translate it into a policy towards Israel. And I thought it was very moving when in the January of 2020, the President Steinmeier visited Yad Vashem to commemorate the liberation of Auschwitz. Then President Steinmeier and President Rivlin actually went to Auschwitz, and then they came back to Berlin for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I thought that was a very moving process that showed that two countries can go to probably the worst possible symbol of a relationship and come back as very close friends. So you can't divorce the two. But one of the things that I found to be so impressive is the fact that when I look at the past and I now look at the present and I see to what extent the relationship between Israel and Germany has improved in all of the different areas over the last years, I'm actually really amazed and very much inspired by that intimacy in the relationship, that degree of cooperation, as I said, in many different areas, which are vitally important to the benefit of both of our peoples. So it's not just a relationship between governments, it's also a relationship that very much impacts the peoples, the respective peoples of both countries.
So, to give this interview a bit of a lighter perspective, I have prepared 5 questions with a one-word answer. I hope it's not too tricky.
Diplomats can't answer anything with one word.
Oh, really? We will try, right?
Yeah.
So, first one. What was the biggest positive surprise you encountered in Germany?
My biggest surprise was, in fact, I think, from the beginning, the incredible friendship. So I'd say one word, friendship.
Friendship. Number 2, what was the biggest disappointment?
This is not one word, but I really very much tried and wanted to dramatically expand the youth exchange between both of our countries, and because of Corona and other kind of like elections in Israel, we didn't go far enough in achieving this, and I hope it will be achieved in the coming months. But I'd say that is a big disappointment that we weren't able to do that, dramatically expand the youth exchange between the two countries. It's probably one of the most important investments in our future.
Number 3, what will you miss the most?
I miss very much, I loved where I live, a lot of lakes and nature in Berlin, and but it's not just the places, it's also the people. You've made, in a short period of time, some amazing friends. So I'll miss also the scenery around, but I'll also miss the human scenery as well. So
Israel has the best food, from my opinion, but I still need to ask you. 4th question, Klöße mit Rotkraut, dumplings with red cabbage, or hummus with falafel?
Well, I probably neither, but I have my own place in Jerusalem, which is like a small restaurant in the market of Machne Yehuda, which is the real Israeli food. And this is, every time I go back, that's one of my first stops. So,
but let me ask you, what is your favorite food then, if it's not the Israeli or German one?
My problem is that I have too many favorite foods, and that's why I'm on a diet right now. And but I have a lot of favorite foods. I come from my father's family is from Samarkand. My father originally was born in Samarkand, my mother in Israel. So I have very rich cuisines from both sides.
That's great. Great. So last question with a one-word answer. What are you happy to leave behind?
I don't know.
The stressful daily life?
Well, I would say that, I prefer to take the Fifth Amendment on that. Look, it's been an amazing experience. I don't think anyone in the Israeli Foreign Service could have such an interesting and challenging and sensitive position as the ambassador of Israel to Germany. And like nothing I've done is ever simple. It's never on one level. It's always has many different meanings. But I'll miss leaving that behind, that encounter with so many different emotions, of seeing things that make you sad on one side, sad in one sense, but also inspired on the other. So, in general, how would you describe the relationship between German Jews and Israel? Did it change over time you were here? Comparing also the change in governments from both sides, Germany and Israel. I must say that, look, the last year, 2 years, we had 4 elections in Israel, and finally a transition of government, a very significant transition of government. In Germany, you had also elections last year, and you had a significant transition of government. During that last year in particular, we've had a tremendous amount of disruption because of Corona. And I'd say that the relationship between Germany weathered these changes in an incredible way. I mean, we had from last May the visit of Heiko Maas when missiles were still falling in Israel from Gaza, the visit of President Steinmeier, the visit of Angela Merkel in October. There were also other visits, but also the visit of Annalena Baerbock after she became foreign minister, and even the minister, the chancellor's visit recently in Israel. So it's been, and also as you may remember, Prime Minister Bennett dropped by Berlin after he went to Russia. So, I mean, there's been no lack of very high-level consultations, which are very frequent, the senior diplomatic level, the senior level of leadership. And that's been, I think it's weathered all these different things. It's come out even stronger to a certain extent. The relations, I hope, between Israel and the Jewish community here, and also the Israeli community here, I've always tried to reach out both to the Jewish community and to the Israeli community. I always say we need to be united. That is my central message. We need to come together. We need to work together. There can always be certain differences on different issues, but that is one of the most crucial things that the German people and German Jewish people should learn, is that unity is really a very crucial element of our existence and our ability to maintain our values and our customs. So I would hope that they look on Israel as being a welcoming factor, a factor that increases and strengthens their standing in Germany, as I think it actually does, because the partnership between Israel and Germany is so strong. I think that is one of the answers to anti-Semitism, in the sense that, you know, on that level we are working so closely together. That's a message that should resonate with all of the German people and the Israeli people as well.
Thank you so much. These are strong words, and they give us perspective on how to move on after you left. We wish you the very best for your time in Israel. And when we are looking into the near future, what will your life be with your wife, Laura, in Israel after this time?
Well, we'll be back, and I'm retiring from the Foreign Service after, as I said, over 40 years. And we'll be back with our children, and I'm hopeful they will settle down. And, you know, eventually we'll be looking after the grandchildren. But I'm going to still remain. I want to obviously still be involved in different things, and the experience I've had in Germany has been such an incredible one. I can always see myself, you know, now that I've finished being the ambassador of Israel in Germany, I'm sure to a certain extent I'll be an ambassador of Germany to Israel, and I'll be very happy to keep that relationship very strong.
Thank you very much, Jeremy, for being with us. Vielen Dank, liebe Zuschauerinnen und Zuschauer vor den Bildschirmen. Auf bald!